Hello and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm Maria Luz, your host, a certified hypnotist, an astrologer, and psychic medium. Today's episode is entitled The Lunar Nodes Part 2. And if you haven't listened yet, go back to last week and listen to Part 1, because that's where I introduce what the North and the South Node, otherwise known as the Lunar Nodes, mean in astrology and how they may be able to give you additional context to where you've also already been exploring your chart. So in the last episode, I mentioned I would pick up with my own example of what the nodes have shown me and kind of how that's worked out in my life so far. So, of course, I'm still distilling the last 54 years of my life. Wow, that's a long time. However, I will just jump right in. So my North Node is in Pisces in the 4th house. So in the last episode, I was going through house by house, and I was also giving the sign that's naturally associated with each house. And I mentioned, unless you actually coincidentally have the same alignment, say first house in Aries, unless that's the case, you're going to have to do some synthesis. So this is a good example there, because Pisces, which is the sign of my North Node, is normally associated with the 12th house. And where I left off last week, I was talking about the 4th house or Cancer. And again, the house is going to be the area of life where you're going to find hints at what your soul intended for you to learn in this life in order to evolve. And if you're doing that, you may find that you feel that you're fulfilling your purpose in this life. So for most of my life, I had a really uncomfortable relationship to home and family. Those are 4th house things. I also found myself easily moving up the career ladder and assuming leadership roles in various organizations. And if you remember last week, I mentioned that if you have your North Node in the 4th house, you may have inherently or in other lives experienced that. And so these really highlight that adeptness with the 10th house themes. And similar to my example last week, just this lack of a comfortable experience with the 4th house themes around home. And so the approach that I naturally took to my career was this very Virgoan approach. So associated with Virgo, which is the opposite sign of Pisces, which my North Node is in. So I was naturally in this kind of opposite end of that axis, which means that I worked extremely diligently. When I began my career, it was super detail oriented. It was supporting bigger, projects, and then, progressed on to more of an analyst role, and then mentoring, and then finally, as I matured, managing and finally leading large organizations, very much in that 10th house or Capricorn mode. And a series of personal experiences, I try to use the most objective term, but led me to really examine my beliefs around family in more of a Piscean way, which would be more of this undefined way and a spiritual way. And so it was really through some of these spiritual experiences and the abilities that I found were coming out and that I started cultivating that I met people who I now consider family. And so I'm kind of doing the opposite instead of what I was doing in the first part of my life. That part that actually came naturally, because I was really stuck in that south mode, way of feeling and then way of behaving. So yeah, so now I have these people who I consider family, and I've also met, if that's the right word, ancestors and souls in my soul family through just being able to connect now with spirit, and through my exploration of home and foundation. And I've found this value in this intuitive and imaginative world that I didn't have before. And I would venture to say that people, raised in this Western culture, are raised to kind of look down almost on the intuitive and to think of imagination as being something you only do when you're a child. But that is the beauty of our conscious mind. It's meant to be imaginative and to use not just the more easy features of memorization, but to combine all of that with our intuitive nature as an animal as well. So anyway, I could go on a diatribe there, but I won't. So anyway, and I've also folded that into what I'm doing for my career now. So almost, I would say, come full circle, but I know I haven't, because I still have a lot more to explore. And so, as a side note, all of this aligns with that Pluto paradigm that I mentioned last week that I practice as part of the Jeffrey Wolf Green lineage, because Pluto is in Virgo for me in the 11th house. And so I mentioned, again, some of those themes about Virgo, and the 11th house has a lot to do with belonging, and kind of looking towards the future and things like that. But anyway, that explanation requires a much longer analysis using the whole method. So I won't go on about that. But I will move on, and on to the 5th house, which is also associated with Leo. And remember, when I say the sign, that would be more, when you're synthesizing, it would be more the attitude or the approach. And then the house would be kind of the area of life. So I know it gets kind of confusing when we start mushing these things together. So anyway, 5th house. It may come naturally to be part of a group with this placement and to feel the group's sense of purpose. And you may have this inherent belief that if you belong to the group and align with its culture, that you'll be happy. And in some ways, a group allows you to hide out and not have to express yourself or examine what actually would make you happy. But your soul will challenge you to express what is you, and what you want, what it is you want to create from your heart, and how do you experience wonder and joy. And so exploring through a child's perspective or through some other means of creative self-expression will yield this growth. And you can then become your own leader in life. And then the 6th house and Virgo, there's an opportunity to grow by getting into the grind. So what I mean by that is getting into those day-to-day tasks, taking care of your health in the most repetitive but likely effective ways, of being in a position of humility, so in service to others, of seeking the most efficient way to deal with all things, of cultivating discernment with people and some personal responsibility. However, you may find yourself coming in just more drawn to the opposite types of experiences, where they are ambiguously defined, or they're kind of imaginative or timeless or spaceless things. And drawn into these spaces, you may also feel confused and maybe inadequate and in need of constant saving, that kind of martyr or victim syndrome. And so, can you take your spiritual or imaginative adroitness and make it of use on this plane by finding the spiritual in that every day? And when you utilize your capacity for compassion in focused acts of service to others, you can rise out of this confused victimhood. And the 7th house and Libra. Compromise in relationships, understanding that the person on the other side of that relationship has an equal right to live out their life's desire is what you're being asked to gain experience with. So you're very quick. You can be, that can serve you, but it's not always helpful. And so you may struggle with tact or just waiting for others to catch on to your what you're talking about, your desire or your goals, etc. And you may know yourself well and have this internal drive, and sometimes it's really admirable to others, but then you're so dang competitive, you end up being alone, at the finish line. And so you're being asked to really slow down, consider others, consider your team, what they want and need. And so look for those ways where you can all win and you're not going to end up alone. And how can you, or I guess you could be with someone, but they would not be a very happy partner. So how can you pace yourself in life and think of the big picture? Then the 8th house, you're drawn to setting up a secure and comfortable place from which to do life. You have an aversion to the messy psychological underpinnings of life, and that is exactly what your soul wants you to gain experience with. You dispute the saying that no man is an island, believing that you can just furnish your island with everything that brings you comfort and believe, that will make you happy forever. And that you don't really have to change your way of living with all of your precious things around you. But of course, life happens and you may find yourself wanting to share with someone else. And that's going to force you to learn how to share, learn how to delve into intimacy, or maybe this comes through your work as well, where you're going to be challenged to do that. And just being in relationship, if you're close to someone, eventually you're going to have to hold some space for loss and for death. And so this placement is really asking, can you participate in your own and others' transformations, which come often through those most difficult experiences that we can have as humans. And so you'll find deep healing for yourself and maybe even a gift to healing others, or doing work in that area. And just a caution with this placement is avoid being material wealthy, which is going to feel comfortable to you, but emotionally bankrupt. Just beware if that begins to look like your life. 9th house, you always want more information. Your curiosity can arm you with many facts from which to explore your immediate world, but you find you aren't comfortable forming your own life philosophy. So pay attention if your fact-filled world is too comfortable, and stretch yourself to expand your perception of the world and of knowledge itself. It's not just information. I was telling my sister-in-law the other day that I had to get comfortable with having knowledge that I didn't learn. So same kind of goes here. You're going to have to get to that point of knowledge that you didn't learn, that you didn't memorize, because it's coming to you from somewhere bigger. So beware of getting caught in the role of passing information between people simply because you have access to it. So instead, what feels like the right thing to do with the information? Where does it fit? And it's not just about the facts. It's about the wisdom gained through expanding your horizons in this life and become fascinated by the way other cultures and places look at life, and go more by feel instead of just checking off pages in the guidebook. And the 10th house, you can establish a safe and secure home base, and you like to stay there. You make home and family a space where others feel comfortable too. The decor in your house may be comprised of family photos and those framed sayings like home is where the heart is, or I just got a visual of like a needlepoint, home sweet home. And safety and the love of close family equals happiness to you. However, now is the time to create a secure space for people in a more visible manner or a public space. It's time to use discipline. It's time to master some area of life where you're the one who's looked up to as the leader, or the elder with the information and the ability to lead people. And in that sense, you'll appreciate your home base more as a foundation from which to do that leadership rather than as the ultimate destination. And setting goals, measuring your success somehow will be important, because it's not just about staying where you feel safe or making others feel safe. There should be some component of ambition in there. And as I mentioned, maybe ultimately being a leader driving the group's goals. 11th house, you may be adept at romance, children, and creativity. And after all, these areas of life can provide a constant stream of joy and a source of flattery. And in fact, you'll get so much external validation from playing the roles that are expected of you that may just become status quo. So after a point, the joy may not give you, or it may, you may not get that hit of joy. And the other side is to think about the future. So not just that more childlike instant gratification, but think about the future, align with like-minded adults to collaborate on projects which serve the collective in a meaningful way. And in order to do this, you really need to see individuals for who they are, including yourself, not just the role that they play or that you play in that group. So be willing to be the follower once in a while and let others take center stage, and you be the one cheering them on because you already have so much confidence. You don't need to gain external validation any longer. And the 12th house, you tend to fixate on order and clockwork efficiency wherever you go, and you may feel anxious when things are not as expected or as planned. And to you, this is reassuring and a natural way to organize your days. And practicality is a strength on which others may rely, and you aren't afraid of the tedious work, as long as there's an ideal that you're working towards. And for this reason, you risk feeling like a martyr or kind of being a masochist. And so can you dissolve this reliance on predictability just a bit and venture in what can't be seen or proven? And this forgiveness of self for not maybe being perfect, and forgiveness of others for just being human and making mistakes, and being open to mystery, or maybe seeking your own brand of spirituality will offer you growth. And because I skimmed the surface on what people have written entire books on, please don't let this be your final stop when it comes to exploring the placement of your own lunar nodes. And I can't stress this enough, but remember, it's the entire axis that we need to work on, not just the extreme expression of just one side. So there's a reason that the nodes are opposite one another, but share a very significant theme. And as we've seen from politics and just the way the world is looking these days, it's really dangerous to inhabit those extremes, and it only harms the collective and sadly innocent, very innocent people. So as I mentioned when I started about my nodes, I've really only recently been able to hold both of those extremes in my heart through exploring that common theme of the Virgo Pisces axis. And I think of that part of me who spent all that time and effort in the kind of Virgo side, or the 10th house area of life, where I was visible and I was receiving these accolades for that diligent efficiency and kind of perfection. I've come to understand that I'm not meant to recreate that as the person I've transformed into. So meaning, when I first went off on my own as a spiritual entrepreneur, I was letting that program run subconsciously to want to create something like big, and where I would be visible and seen, as a leader, and where I could do everything perfectly, or be this specialist, which is kind of where, I ended up in my work. And I almost was I just, again, subconsciously, the program was running to recreate that, but in this new area of work. And of course, I'm not meant to do that. I've transformed as a person for a reason. And so now I'm really shrinking my sphere of influence. And, this time it's as a healer. And I'd love to just work one-on-one. And I've, also mentioned, creating what I see of now as family. And from the outside, it looks like, I say in quotes, like, oh, it's only myself and my dog. That's my family now. However, as I've been exploring this, that's only the visible family. I feel really supported by a larger invisible family of souls, and also these unrelated humans, most of whom I've never met in person, but only on Zoom. Okay, so I suppose with all of this, we could just get our side of the street cleaned up and then just remain on that little patch. But then we would be missing the opportunity of service to others. And that service and connection, they seem to be the keys to expand love. And personally, I think that's what it's all about, is for us to understand the creative power of love and see where that can get us. And as well as to experience the truth of what it means to be the unique human that we happen to be in this life. What is our birth chart? What is that unique experience? There's a reason they're not all the same. We're not meant to have the same experiences as every other damn person. Okay. You are now empowered to be consciously curious about the lunar nodes. If you want to check out my website and see what I have to offer, it's marialuz.online. You can also email me, info@marialuz. And I also have some astrology information on my Substack if you want to read about all of the planets, about your big three, about some of the asteroids, all the good stuff there as well. And there's a code in the show notes to give you a discount on any astrology, hypnosis, or psychic mediumship service that you find interesting. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and have a great day. Bye-bye.